want to thank you for coming because this meeting is intended as a public information meeting. We want your thoughts this morning. So again, due to the weather and everything, we appreciate that you're here. Thank you. First thing I'd like to do is ask the commission to introduce itself, starting on my far left.
Alan Weiner, City Planner. Robert Flanagan, Assistant City Planner.
Robert Lawrence, alternate.
All right.
Gary Lawton, alternate.
Jody Sills-Gagney, alternate.
Marie Keaton, Commissioner.
And I'm John Shore, Vice Chairman. Again, thanks for coming. And I'd like to turn this meeting over to our consultant, Mr. Chalder. This meeting is intended entirely, as much as possible, to show thoughts. We've been going through this process for some months now of updating our plan of conservation and development. And this is one of the meetings that you're going to get a chance to give us some needed input about the city of Bristol. So, Glenn.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
You guys are so chipper and cheerful. Let me see if I can put you to sleep on a Saturday morning with a PowerPoint presentation. My name is Glenn Chalder. I'm with a firm called Planimetrics, and we've had the pleasure of here working with the Commission on preparing a draft plan of conservation and development for Bristol. I've put together a PowerPoint because the plan itself is actually quite comprehensive and thorough, but to give everybody an overview of all of the things that are in the plan and actually set the stage for discussion and comments later. So allow me, if you will, to kind of go through the PowerPoint. The cover of the plan is actually an image from the 1920 plan that was done for Bristol, Connecticut. And that's kind of significant for a couple of reasons. First of which, back in 1920, city plans were not all that common. So Bristol was quite forward-thinking in terms of having a plan done at that time to look at how the city was growing and changing. And really this kind of sets the stage, if you will, for forward-thinking about the city and the things that we can or should be working on to make the city a better place in the future. And the second reason it's on the cover at this point is that during the time of this plan, and each plan generally has about a 10-year life, we're going to be looking out on things that we can accomplish in the next 10 years. It will be the centennial of this document. So for that reason, we again chose to make the plan cover the image from this 1920 plan for the city. Let me give you an overview of what a plan of conservation and development is all about and the reason for its creation. A plan is not a set of regulations that indicates what has to be done by who. It's really an advisory document that's meant to point out things that will be good for the city. So just like having a square meal and adhering to a diet and all the other stuff, the plan is really a guide for the things that we should be thinking about. And it causes us or forces us to ask ourselves the question, what kind of community do we want to be in the future? Are the current policies that the city has getting us there? Or in fact, are we actually kind of working against each other in some places? How can we be more efficient or consistent? And overall, how do we make Bristol a better place in the future? So the process to date is that there is a 2000 plan of conservation and development. Working with the Commission, we've gone through that plan. We've identified and talked about some different strategies. We've gotten community input. We did a telephone survey of residents to get feedback from them. For people who weren't so intrepid to show up at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, thanks again for that. We prepared a draft plan. The Commission has reviewed it. And our purpose, again, is to get additional thoughts and comments as we move ahead towards adoption. The community input, again, included a kickoff meeting back in June, I think, of last year. Again, multiple meetings with the Planning Commissions, all of which have been open to the public, telephone survey, and the workshop meeting overall. So now I'd like to give you an overview of actually what's in the plan itself. The plan is broken up into sort of 5 main pieces. The very first part is we set the stage for things that are affecting Bristol today. So this is the planning context portion, the things that are on our mind as we start to prepare a plan. Then there's 3 thematic areas of the plan. The conservation strategies are things that Bristol may want to preserve or protect as we go towards the future, things that are important to us in terms of our DNA as a community. Development strategies is about how we want to guide growth and change in the future, because change is going to happen to us. It's happened to us historically. It's going to happen to us again. How do we want to approach that in the future? And then the third part is the infrastructure strategies, and this has to do with services or facilities as a community we'd like to have available for our quality of life, et cetera. And then a conclusion at the end talks about how the plan, in fact, can be implemented. So some of the context things are actually kind of interesting and important. Bristol's population growth since the very first census in 1790 grew quite significantly because of the industriousness of our community in terms of our contribution to the world economy. Our population grew quite significantly, but really since about 1970, 1980, population growth has flattened. We're actually at a kind of a flex point here right now that depending on how we look at the future, our population could go up, stay steady, or decline. So this is actually kind of a significant time for us to be planning. I've prepared some charts here to kind of show you how our age composition is changing over time. Now what this chart shows is different age groups, 5-year age groups from 0 all the way out to age 85. And the height of these bars represents the number of people in different age groups. Everybody with me? So what this chart shows is the change that occurred in Bristol in a decade. So in the 1970s, we had this many people born in Bristol. These are people who were here 10 years earlier, who were here then. So that's what the tan color represents. Green represents net in-migration. These age groups are bigger than before. And the white caps, if you will, on some of these, represents people that left Bristol. So the age group is smaller after the decade than we would have expected. You with me? So what's interesting about this is the growth in Bristol has tended to come from births, right? These are brand new people coming to our community, right? They weren't here 10 years earlier. And the second thing is with net in-migration of younger adults moving to Bristol. So if we look at this during the 1970s, who in here was, by the way, was born between 1945 and 1965? You are a baby boomer, okay? And you will see yourself reflected in this chart, and you can think about you and your life in terms of what has happened. But the baby boomers here were just around the 20 to 25-year age group, so renters possibly. As we go to the change in the 1980s, what we have here again is population growth due to births, net in-migration of baby boomers, out-migration of some of the other age groups. In the 90s, similar pattern, and what happened in the last 10 years. So we're going to roll through those again just for a moment here, and I want you to keep track of what happens with the baby boomers. Okay? See that? We're getting to be an older community dominated by the baby boomers. Now what happens as the baby boomers get older? Okay? Household sizes get smaller. Kids move out, we're living by ourselves, sometimes we're single, smaller households. So as a result, Bristol's dynamics in the future are going to be affected by some of these changing age composition things, and I want you to keep that in mind. Our age composition is expected to change, and in fact, the age group, which is 60 and over, is expected to grow because of the baby boomers to the future and then start to decline again. So our age composition in the future is going to be different than it is in the past. This is important for us to think about. We have a diverse housing stock. Our economy has changed over the years. If you look at 1960, we had about 10,000 manufacturing jobs. By the year 2000, it was down to about 3,000. And the corollary is we had about 3,000 service jobs in 1960, and up to about 14,000 service jobs in 2010. So our economy and the types of jobs in Bristol have changed, but the region has changed and the state has changed during that same period. But these are some of the things that are affecting us overall and set the stage for some of the recommendations in the plan. So as I indicated, one of the key themes of the plan is conservation strategies. One of the first chapters in the plan is the recommendations to protect natural resources. Throughout the plan are a number of maps which are meant to illustrate and identify where some of the important resources in town are. And on this map, we're showing the important water resources, wetlands, floodplains, steep slopes, aquifer protection areas, etc. And again, the plan recommends protecting water resources and protecting other natural resources in the community. And from the telephone survey, 74% of residents felt that Bristol was doing a good job in this area and that we should continue these efforts. plan recommends preserving open space. We have existing open spaces in town, in the city, owned by the city, the various water departments. The state owns property in town. Plan recommends we maintain existing open spaces and acquire new open spaces as opportunities arise, and try to interconnect open spaces, again, as opportunities arise. 60% of residents felt that Bristol should try to acquire more land for open space and parks in the future. Community character is a section of the plan as well. It actually weaves through many of the different chapters in the plan, but Bristol still has farms and farming areas. The plan recommends that those be preserved, that areas such as South Mountain with undeveloped land, that we should try to preserve that in an undeveloped state if we can. Number of historic resources in town, in the city, and those should also be preserved. Important community resources. We recognize that we have a lot of cultural facilities in Bristol, and the plan talks about cultural facilities in the normal sense, and also some pop culture facilities that we have, which make us unique and should be protected and preserved in the future. 87% of residents felt that Bristol should encourage more public events and other activities to celebrate these types of things and help build our community character and tie us together, our social fabric together, if you will. Plan recommends that we continue the efforts in terms of property maintenance and also look at ways to guide and manage community design. 76% of residents felt that Bristol should have a say as to what the outside of new commercial and industrial buildings look like. Yet we really don't have strong procedures in place at the present time, so the plan recommends that we consider doing something in that regard. As a new chapter in the plan, which is different from before, the plan recommends that we promote sustainability. How can Bristol be a greener community in the future in terms of energy conservation, water conservation? And this doesn't just mean the city government itself, but all residents, etc. How can we try to ensure a greener future for ourselves? And then also the issue of resiliency, which is in terms of the changing climate and other things going on, how can we be sure we're ready to respond quickly to situations that come up, such as this February and all the snow we've had, and what do we do with it, where do we put it, etc. The next major section of the plan is related to development strategies. The plan identifies key principles for the downtown area. Now, really over the last months, years, there have been quite a bit of discussion about a specific site in the downtown. The plan doesn't focus on a specific site. It focuses really on the entire downtown area and how we can try to make downtown a thriving and vibrant part of the community and its future. It's important to us. It's the heart of our community. How can we make this a better place in the future? 90% of residents in the survey felt that Bristol should continue efforts to encourage the revitalization of downtown, and the plan outlines those sort of key principles. And some of those principles are to create a focal point there for the community, promote mixed uses, increase the activities and events that happen there, address parking. It's very important in the downtown area that parking work well, promote public spaces and ensure appropriate design. And those principles can be used to review specific development proposals in the downtown area, but the plan doesn't get involved in the nitty-gritty of individual developments themselves. There's also a section in the plan about promoting business development. As part of the survey results, we asked people for different types of businesses, whether they felt they were too many, too few, or just about right in terms of these business uses in the community. And so the plan talks about trying to expand the business tax base, meet the needs that the people have identified in the community overall, provide employment, goods and services, and tax base for the community to help us be a successful community. The plan identifies through it the map how to manage the business development areas. The different colored areas on here represent commercial zones, industrial zones. We have an enterprise zone, and to promote the development of these areas to meet these business development goals. The plan recommends that we look at these zones, locations, and the regulatory criteria to make sure we have good provisions in place. Particularly review the parking requirements. I remember reading not too long ago in the Wall Street Journal that for every car in America, there are 7 parking spaces. So, what are you guys doing with the other 6 right now? But the problem we have from a development perspective is when we dedicate site to pavement, we can't dedicate it to building or landscaping. And so as a city, what we may end up doing by over-providing parking is actually hurting ourselves in terms of our ability to promote a sustainable, livable community and economic development. So the plan recommends that we make sure that our standards are good. I'm not saying they're terrible, but maybe we could make them better. Now, most of the city, I think it's 86% of the city, is zoned for residential development, right? Who here lives in a residential area, right? Okay, there you go. So the plan recommends that we preserve and enhance the integrity and stability of residential neighborhoods. The reason people live here and choose to live here is because of the house, the community, and all the other things. So preserving and enhancing the integrity and stability of neighborhoods is a key recommendation. The plan recommends that we look at guiding multifamily design and proposals where they occur, and encouraging diversification of the housing stock to meet the housing needs of the future. Now, you may recall earlier on I said we have a diverse housing stock. So you may be saying to yourself, what is he talking about? But also recall what I talked about was the changing demographics and the changing age composition of the community. So I happen to live, again, in a single-family house. We've recently become empty nesters, so my wife and I are kind of scratching our heads thinking, why are we living here again? So we're starting to think about housing options and housing choices. And so some of the opportunities that exist for Bristol is because of the diversity of uses and situations that we have in the city, that we can actually make ourselves more attractive, more desirable to an aging population, which hasn't been part of our DNA, right? Who have we typically attracted? Younger families looking for their first housing. If we can keep those people in the community, that becomes population growth and economic growth for the city, and it's something for us to think about for the future. Bristol's not one color. It's multiple areas, neighborhoods in the community. The plan recognizes that. So it talks about specific and unique situations in Forestville, the West End, Route 6, Route 72, other issues related to institutional development, and makes specific recommendations or highlights work that's already been done in the city in terms of special studies of these areas as part of our programs for the future. The third major thematic element of the plan has to do with infrastructure strategies. The plan talks about addressing community facility needs. The city did a space needs study. That work has happened, identified some of these needs. The plan recommends a comprehensive process for addressing community facility needs and maintaining the buildings and facilities that we have. 90% of residents felt that our libraries are adequate, 67% of residents felt that the recreational facilities are adequate, and 55% felt the senior services are adequate. But that result, 27% of the population was unsure because they don't use the facility, so they weren't real clear. But again, the plan recommends addressing our community facility needs. Issues that came out of the space needs study related to City Hall, police, fire, and public works were identified in the plan for additional consideration. In terms of transportation needs, there's multiple elements to our transportation system in the city. The plan recommends that we maintain and enhance the roadway system, identify problem areas, promote what's called access management. Access management is the way that along the roadways, oftentimes the biggest traffic problem is left turns. Somebody stops in the middle of the roadway because they want to go left, blinkers on, and they hold up all the traffic behind them. People trying to get out of a driveway want to turn left and cross lanes. So access management is ways to try to manage the number of driveways and their locations to make the roads as efficient as possible. We have, in the city, considerable investment in our road system. It's very unlikely we're going to be able to build a lot of new roads in the future. So we have to try to figure out how to make the best use of the roads we've got, and access management is one way to do that. And so the plan recommends, particularly in business areas, which is where the problem tends to arise, that we look at that. And pavement management is just an investment philosophy that tries to maintain our roads as cost efficiently as possible, and again, the plan recommends that. There's a section in the plan about promoting pedestrian access. These red lines on this map indicate areas where we do have sidewalks today. So you can see we have a good sidewalk network in the city. The green areas on this map identify areas that are close to desirable destinations. Schools, business areas, or they may generate traffic, multifamily, but areas that should be a priority for us to try to infill our sidewalk network to make our network even stronger. And the red areas on the map are the areas which are lower density areas that might be a little bit more challenging to make a meaningful sidewalk network, but we might want to look at these areas, particularly along the main roads, to make that better. There's also a section in the plan that talks about an overall bicycle system. That bicycling is becoming both a bigger recreational activity. People are actually commuting. I saw a guy this week in the weather commuting on a bicycle. How can we do that, or how can we make provision for this in the city in the future? And the plan suggests possible bike routing. 82% of residents felt that Bristol should do more to create a better pedestrian circulation system, and 82% also felt that we should do more to create a better bicycle circulation system. Transportation needs. The plan recommends that we try and find ways to enhance bus transit and rail service. Bus service in Bristol is going to get better, I think, because of the fast track system, but right now the bus routes in the city highlight Route 6 and Route 72, but sometimes the bus takes side routes, if you will, so that if you really wanted to use the bus to get to someplace, your ability to get back may be compromised by the fact that the bike or the bus at the time that you want to take it doesn't go where you want to go. So we have a challenge here in Bristol to try to make a better bus transit system. In a community of 60,000 people that's as interconnected as we are in the region, it's an opportunity for us, but it's not really set up perhaps as well as it could be. 72% of residents felt that we should seek ways to increase transit services in the community. Bristol benefits from great piped utilities, water, sewer, natural gas. The plan advocates for drainage approaches, low-impact development, and other things like that that will treat rainwater better so we can address some of the flooding issues which are problems in certain areas of the community. It talks about wired utilities, both in terms of electricity and cable and internet, trying to become a more wired community with better service. And the plan also suggests that we start adding wireless services to our thoughts about what makes the city a better place. And these, again, are recommendations in the plan. Conclusions overall. There is a future land use plan in the back of the plan which identifies what we consider to be the sort of the desirable land uses in different areas of the city to guide the Planning Commission and the Zoning Commission in their future work. We've compared the city's plan to the state plan and the regional plan. They are generally consistent in terms of their recommendations for conservation, development, and infrastructure, and that enhances the city's ability to get grants, etc. in the future. And in terms of implementation, the plan recommends that we seek to implement the policies and the action steps or tasks in the plan. Consider a plan implementation committee. This would be a group, informal, made up of members of different boards and commissions to try to break down barriers that sometimes arise and get everybody working together so we can have more ribbon cuttings, groundbreakings, and other things like that to accomplish important projects in the city overall. So that's the overview of the Plan of Conservation Development. I think I kind of went through all the different chapters of the plan. Thank you for listening. About to open it up for public comment. Just a couple of quick ground rules here. It's an open discussion on the plan, so it's not things that have happened, historically in the past, but what we can do for the city in the future. John is our very capable moderator, so if you have a comment to make, raise your hand. John will recognize you. Please stand up. That way I know that I can hear you and other people in the room will be able to hear you as well. Whoops. Speak loudly enough so everybody can hear you. Direct your comments to the commission. The plan is the commission's plan for the future of the community. So if you're going to have influence and make change happen, you've got to convince them that it's a good idea, and please respect the opinions of others. So with that, thank you very much. And